Hello, in this tutorial I will be modeling this game object. So let's analyze it in Krita. So let's take this game object, let's take this image, copy, and let's go into Krita, and we have it right here. So I'm going to cut it so we can focus on it. Let's create another layer, and right now I will start with the bottom part. So right here we can see a cube. Since we are not expecting for this treasure box to be opened within the game, so this would be all hidden. This right here, we can have a face in it, maybe not, it's up to us. And we can see right here we also have an inset of that face, so this would be connected here, and then there would be an internal extrusion. So the perspective here is wrong, but you get the idea. So right here there would be an inset, and there would be an extrusion. So let's hide this and let's save it as, because I do want to use it as a reference within 3ds Max, so I will save it as JPEG just to save some memory. Treasure box. And by the way, I did not create this artwork. This belongs to somebody, I'm not sure where, maybe ArtStation or so on. So now let's switch to 3ds Max. So we have 3ds Max here, and let's load the reference image, and we do that using a plane. So let's create that plane, and let's assign a reference to it. So we can press M, or we can use this icon. We can click on it and it should activate the material editor. So let's apply this material editor, and let's give it, so I am using a standard legacy to load that in. So we have this drop down button, just press on it and make sure the show incompatible checked, and once it's loaded, you just look for standard, and you have right here legacy. And right here within diffuse we can press this box, and if you want you go under maps and look for the diffuse, check that diffuse and click no maps, and we are looking for a bitmap image right here. So we press it and we pick that texture and apply this texture to the object. So there are two ways to do it. You can drag and drop, and let's undo it. So this did not. or you could use the assign material to selection. So if we apply a different material to it, just to show you, so we click the active material, so we do want this material, and we make sure the object is selected, and then press or click on the assign material to selection, and right here we have the reference image. So let's rotate this image 90 degrees. Make sure your angle snap is on. If it's not on, turn it on, and rotate it 90 degrees. Let's move it up. I want to close the material editor, move it up, and move it a little bit to the back. And now we want to freeze that image. Click on the layer explorer, and we want to freeze it. But if we freeze it right here without updating the properties, it will show any frozen in gray. So how do we fix that? So we right click on the object, and we have properties. So right here, and right here show frozen in gray, so we want that unchecked. And if you want to freeze it, you could freeze it here also. We click apply, and now the image or the reference image is unselectable. And now let's build the bottom one, the bottom part of the treasure. So how do we do it? So we use a box. We build that box, we give it some height, and let's center that box. So we switch to the move tool right here. So this is the move tool, and we want to center this box. So how do we do that? So those ones. All we have to do is just right click on the up and down arrows. Make sure you press right click, not right click and not the left one, and it will zero it out. So right here, lovely. And if we press Alt X, we can make it see through. So right now it should be a bit thinner, maybe this thin. We'll worry about the distortion later. For now we just want to worry about the inset and the extrude. After we make sure it's up to scale, I will not be exact, to be honest, so because this is only to show you how to model it, how to use the reference image for your own advantage. And right here under modify tab, we right click on the box, and we choose editable poly. This way we can do a lot more stuff to it. If it's a primitive object, all you can do is just adjust the height, adjust the width, and adjust the number of segments. So right now we're not seeing the segments, so to activate that you press on F. So you press on F4, and we can see here that we do not have any more segments. So right here we do the drop down menu, and we can see a polygon. So we want to select all those polygons, and as I said before, right here we have the settings or inset. So if we do inset, this is where you do your guessing. We do not want that. Let's undo that. So we want to make sure that we press the settings so we can have access to a lot more options. So right here it says inset as a group, and we do not want that. We want to do it as by polygon so we can have a lot more access to it. So we want to have a lot more control. So let's make it a bit cartoony and make it a bit high. It's up to you. And using the check mark to make it official, and then we do extrude, and right here we want it to go in, so you can make it as deep as you want, and make sure it's by local normal, not by group. And then check mark. So we are almost done. Let's click on the object and press Alt X to make it shaded. Anyway, so how do we make it look funky just like in the image? We use an FDD. It's a modifier, FFD, sorry, and we will be using the 2x2x2. So we press the down button and we pick control points. We select the top points and expand it on the x-axis and a little bit on the y-axis. So this might be a bit too deep, so we just make it a little bit subtle, and that's it. We are done with it. Let's press the let's click on the FFD, right click on it and collapse all, so to make all the changes official. If you want to do like later changes, make sure that modifier stays in, but for me, yeah, it doesn't matter. So let's switch back to Krita, and we want to look at the top part, this part right here. This part right here. So let's create a new layer and let's take a look at this one. So how do you create this one? It does seem a bit complex, but there are endless ways of doing it. So all we can tell, this is an extrude. Once we build a uniform arc, we can see this is an extrusion here. The question is, how do you approach it? For me, as I see it right now, I will do it with a plane, then give that plane and assign that plane an FFD modifier, but this time it's not 2x2x2, 3x3x3. We make sure we have all the segments in, and then we extrude. So let's switch back to 3ds Max. Before we can go any further, let's give this a standard material so it looks much more presentable. So this one right here, let's assign it to this object, and we give it the color black. It looks much more presentable. And now let's focus on the cover, whatever it is called. So as I said before, let's start with the plane right here. I'm sure you can do it with the box. I'm sure you can do it with the cylinder. Maybe cylinder is a lot faster, but for me I want to do it with a plane, because plane you can start it on one dimensional, then after all your edits are done you can make it look a lot, you can add more insets and extrusions to it. So let's move to the top view, and if we want to make it precise with as big as the box, we can turn on snapping. So for now, if you right click on the 3, so right here, if we right click on it, we can see vertex. So if we create that plane right now, it will snap to it. Do you see the green cursor? This is snapping to it, so we can snap to it. And right now this is as big as the box, and that's what we want. And right now it has a few more segments in it, so this is where we want to do all the editings before moving forward. So we can tell, let's switch to from wireframe to default shading. So right here we want these two segments to be closer to the end, and same thing here, we want it to be a bit closer to the end. So this is our opportunity to make the changes as a primitive object. So maybe we want to change that to maybe make it, sorry, we go into the modify tab and change this to maybe this is 2. So let's move it a bit to the top. Let's turn off snapping and move this a bit to the top. So we want these to be two segments, and right here also as 2 segments. So it counts 3, 1, 2, 3, but we want 2 segments. So right now we have 3 by 3 faces and 2 segments for horizontal and vertical. And now, as we have done before, change it to editable poly, and we want to change those segments, make them closer to the end. We can use the scale tool, but we want the scale to be centered. This is not centered. This is not doing anything. It's useless. So how do we do that? So right here we want to change the pivot of the axis. So we want to change it to the middle. See? Now we can make those modifications. And same thing here. We change it, make it a bit closer to the end. And now let's we can see it, if we want to make that curvature a lot smoother, so we will need to be adding segments right across in the middle, and for the pull down right here also we need to add a bit more segments vertically. So let's do that. So how do we do it? We select one edge and press ring, and once we do that we can make connect, and let's add okay, so let's undo that. So we just want to select these two. I don't want to make modification to the sides. press connect settings. Sorry, let's select these two as well, because we want the connection to be across, and maybe do it maybe 3. You can make the spacing if you want, change the spacing. Change it to 0. Then if we want to make another modification on the fly rather than just going back and press the connect settings, we can do plus, and let's select those faces. Okay, that's good. I like that. So right now we will be focusing on the downward, this one right here. So how do we do that? You could go into vertices and start making those yourself. I don't want to do that. I'm a bit lazy. So I will select the whole thing, FFD, and this time if we want it a lot smoother we can do 4x4x4. Let's try that. We have 4x4x4. Select control points and then pull that out. You see how smooth it is, and based on the image, yeah, it looks okay. And we can choose these control points and move it up, just like in the image. Maybe make it wider, and right here let's make that flushed, yeah, and move it to the bottom. So let's move that here, move this up, and in the middle to make that curvature, let's move it down, and right here move this down too. And this is good. So we select FFD 4x4x4 and collapse all and click yes. And now let's make that adjustment right here, or undo. Let's undo. Maybe this control point needs to be moved to the front just a little bit. If you want to turn off grid, just press G on your keyboard, G for grid. So it looks like this is a bit flushed, so we can fix that. Maybe we can add another FFD. See, this is with a lot more points. Maybe make this and move it to the front. This two. This one, move it to the back. I love FFD. Makes life a lot simpler. And that's it. We can add another edit poly on top of it if we want to keep history. So right here it has been expanded. So let's select Swift loop and add another edge loop here. And right now let's make it thicker. So how do we do that? Using polygons. Let's make sure the back, yeah, the back needs another edge loop. If you press shift, it will adjust the curvature. Maybe let's move this, make it a bit straight. And now let's select polygons and let's add some thickness to it. And extrude. Let's make it by local norm. This is not what we need or not what we want. So how do we fix that? Let's select the let's undo. Let's try this again. Yeah, well, we don't want it that way. And I don't think there's a fix for it. So let me try this. Let's right click and collapse all. Yes, then go under. I think it's under, yeah. So it's under the utilities, reset Xform and reset selected. And something should be had been added to the as a modifier. Reset Xform, right click and collapse all. And now let's try it again. So we have it selected, and let's click extrude by local. Yeah, it's a bit, no, it's not as good as we want it. So maybe this is a bit better. Yeah, it needs some thickness to it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is okay. Maybe we can use the scale tool to just move it slightly. Yeah. It's a bit better. Okay. So this is good for now. So we can tell this is a lot thicker right here. So let's see. I've selected the border. Yeah. Maybe we do some scaling, and this looks good. And we can tell it's being encompassed by the letter right here. So for now this is good. So let's give it the color black, and let's give it the same material as this one right here, and we are making real progress. So let's look at the tongue here, at the belt. So how do you build this belt? Let's switch to Krita. So right here, how is this being built? This could be really simple. We just select the surface on the cover and just extrude it. And this would be a separate piece. But for now, let's build this first. So we can use a plane to build this. So we would have a symmetry. And on the symmetry it will duplicate the other side, and we have a hole right in the middle. So let's do that. Since we have the reference image, this is from a previous tutorial, so I don't want it. Let's switch to 3ds Max, and right here we have something. So we do have something ready. Maybe we want to make it a bit thinner. So how do we do this? Maybe we can copy and paste, but this time using as a copy. So we've created another top. I'm sure there's a better way of doing it. To be honest, I'm not sure what that way is. Yeah. So what you do is you press Control and Shift and drag. And maybe you do it to a separate object. That way it has no control over you. We just move it down. And now we select face or polygon, select all, and extrude. Perfect. Select all if you want to make it a bit thinner, and scale it. So for now, we do not want the bottom part. Let's delete. And maybe we just select these two edges and we bridge it. And then we add the swift loop to the middle of it. And using vertices, we can do target weld. And there we go. This is good. So we are making a progress here. So let's create the metal piece. To do that, as I said before, we use a plane. Let's move to the front view. Let's select the layers. Let's create another. So what we can do is we can select those three objects, and if we press add layer, it adds anything is selected to that new layer. So let's see it. And right here, everything has been moved to a new layer. So let's hide it so we can focus on the middle part. Let's select the default. So can you see that thing? The three layers in green, that means it's active. So if we press here and you make any object, you can create it, but as a hidden layer, so it will show it for you. We do not want that. So let's hide it, select the default layer, and let's create that plane. So right here, what do we want to do? So we can tell there's a gap here, and we can add as an FDD, and we can make, so let's draw it out. Let's draw it together. So let's switch to Krita So how do we do it? So this is the plane we do. So you would have here, and we would have another angle here, and this one right here. So we would have like four faces, and the face in the middle, it would be split, and we do that by using chamfer or bevel. So let's switch back to 3ds Max. Let's make this an editable poly, and let's add a center edge so we can see the faces correctly. So let's give it some material so we can see it clearly. So as I said before, this is a symmetric object. Let's select those faces and delete them, and let's add a symmetry modifier. So to keep seeing the symmetry, make sure this thing is on. So let's select edges. We'll move this edge a bit closer to the end, because we can tell this is thinner and this is much thicker. And now let's chamfer it. Click OK, and now we select the edge, these two edges, and we extrude. So this is a bit tapered in. We select to vertex and move that in. Maybe they're a bit too high. We make it shorter. Maybe we have too many edges here. Control and backspace. So we'll move this a bit higher, and this seems to be a bit smaller than this, so let's make this one shorter. And let's add an FFD modifier, and it can be added before the symmetry or after. If you do it after the symmetry, the whole thing would be selected, but we only need to edit the one half. So let's select the down button, drop down, and select control vertex, and we move this in. Okay, looks good. And now let's add another editable poly. Not batch, poly. Drop down and select vertex, and let's make this a bit roundy. We could select those vertices and select an FFD 3x3x3 if you feel lazy like I am. So we can make this makes it a bit. Let's close the material editor, make this a bit wider. Let's make this a bit smaller. Maybe we'll make this edge a bit thicker. Make this a bit higher. Maybe make it a bit curvy. And make this smaller. And make this bit higher. Let's make this a bit closer, so let's shorter. Okay, good enough. So let's do collapse all. Yes. And we want to make the hole in the middle. So we need a cube. So how do we make that cube? So let's add another edge here. Maybe another edge here. And maybe we want to make those faces. We want to delete those faces. Select polygons. And maybe just delete those faces. And delete. Select this vertex. Move it up. Let's delete the 1/2 and add a symmetry again. This is good enough. So we can see it is a bit roundish. So right now let's do some target weld. So since this is a game object, we do not need all those polygons. And to add the curvature, we might need to add, so this one right here, this one right here, same thing. Select edges. No, I just want to delete this one and make it a bit smooth. Same thing here. Let's move it in. Maybe make it a bit wider so it looks a lot smoother. And remove the middle one, control and backspace. So this is good enough. Let's do collapse all, and let's add a shell modifier just to make it thicker. Give it some thickness. Let's activate the layer explorer and unhide it, and let's move this to the center. So as I told you before, just zero those out and then move top, rotate and make it a lot smaller. It's too big for now. So you can tell this goes a bit up, the the front and small. So looking at this is a bit too steep, so let's add another FFD 2x2 and make the bottom one a bit steep, right? Which is good. Okay. And smaller. This is good for now, and right click and collapse all. And now using this face, let's expand this, let's extrude it so it goes out. So right now it just goes to the bottom, rotate, and let's make this a bit chamfered. So we can give it that curvature. So this is a bad geometry. Let's do target weld. Let's select those faces and move it down. Maybe that, yeah, the tongue seems a bit too long. Let's make it smaller and let's give it another edge. So this right now is not gonna allow you to have an edge loop. What you can do is you can slice it using a plan. Just move that plan down and slice. Now disable slice plan. Let's select that edge loop and move it. Yeah. Let's make it a bit smooth. Maybe move it to the top. And vertex as well. Let's make it to the top, and it's good for now. And now let's add that piece of metal. This could easily be just a cube. Move it up. Let's activate snapping. Let's turn off snapping, make it smaller. Move it in. Let's add some segments to it. So I'll be adding a height segment. And let's convert it to editable poly using vertices. I'll move this right there, make this a bit curvy, make it X-ray mode, just to select this one right here and measure. So this one, make it thick, maybe move this a bit higher, and this one make it a bit curvy. Let's make it the same material as the other ones. Perfect. Maybe let's make it a bit thicker. Let's scale it sideways. So let's convert this to editable poly. And I see like a lot of issues with the geometry. Let's see if we can fix it by using clear all. Yeah, that's good. And now let's add the big lettering. So this is easily done. So what we are using, what I will be using is spline, and I will be using the line tool. So look on the front. So you can see I have enabled in viewport. So let's do this. And let's make sure it is rectangular. Let's give it some thickness. And let's give it some length. Yeah, this is too big. So let's make it smaller. Move it sideways 9 degrees. And let's move this in. Okay, that's good. Let's convert it to editable poly, and we will need to do some geometry adjustments. So we'll select edge, and let's remove a lot of those edge loops. They are not needed. Control and backspace. And now let's select edge, select this edge, and then do a ring so we can add edge loops. So will we be using connect, and let's add a lot of edges, maybe 5. And we will be using an FFT modifier, maybe 3 by 3 by 3. We select the control points, and then we make it Okay, let's undo. So let's hide the chest box. Okay. So we can see it only assigned the FFD to the selected edges. So let's switch back here. Let's make sure nothing is selected, and so we can apply it to the whole thing. And now we can select those control points and make it smaller. Maybe move it down a little bit. Okay, it's good. And now let's add that cut in. So let's add another edit poly modifier, and let's use the cut tool. So maybe we can do this. Select those faces, delete and delete, and let's make a similar cut right here. So use the cut tool, select a polygon, then delete. Let's use edges to close those by using a bridge. So just bridge. Oh, okay, so now let's select the okay, so we need to do some fixing here because I see some vertices has been created by accident. Okay, let's hope it works now. And bridge, nice. And then bridge again. Okay, good. And now let's create the handle. So we can see a cylinder and a box. So how can we do this? So let's try together. Let's collapse all with the letter, and let's create a cylinder. Let's make it as a half cylinder, so this is 18. We change it to 10. So convert to editable poly. We select those polygons and delete. And delete. So let's rotate this 90 degrees and 90 degrees on the y-axis, and we can tell these two faces has been extruded up and down. So let's do that. So we do the extrusion. It's not perfect, but we can fix it. and move this to the side. Okay, much better. Okay. Let's make sure this is flat. Let's select these edges, vertices. Okay, good. Seems a bit thinner and shorter. We select those edges and we do chamfer. And now let's fix some of those edges. So we target weld. We are okay with triangles, but we're not okay with hexagons. This is good. Let's add an edge here to the middle to make it a bit curvy. Perfect. And now let's select those polygons and let's extrude them. As you can see here, I think we should have edges here so it looks a lot circular. So let's do that. So let's go into polygons, sorry, edges, and select these two and extrude. So it is okay to do a lot of fixing during the process. Let's use those edges and bridge. Again, bridge, bridge, and bridge. Now we're using vertices to flatten them. So right here on the side we have make planar, so you can make the edges or the faces straight. So this is good for now. So let's select those edges and bridge. Same thing here, a bridge, and 3ds Max is smart enough. If you select a group of edges, it will know which one to bridge to what. Perfect. Let's change to hierarchy and center the pivot. Let's make it a bit shorter and move it to the side. So this does seem to have unnecessary edges, so let's remove those. Control and backspace. Maybe just remove one, the end one. Backspace, and maybe this one as well. Yeah, good enough. Let's make it a bit stockier, and let's add a torso. Maybe 70 degrees. Apply snapping, change to W, and then yeah, this makes life a lot faster with the snapping. It's too big. Let's turn off snapping by pressing S. Let's make this a bit smaller, make it to the top. So let's make this a bit thinner. Let's make this a bit thinner too. And let's give each one of those a same material. Assign material to selection and change the color to black. Let's make this a bit lower polygon count. 10 by 5, good enough. And let's make the top, the last part of the project. So this does seem it's a cube with a cylinder. So this one I will create it using, as you have guessed, a spline tool. So using line, let's change to the front, and I will be applying a symmetry tool. So let's go to the properties. Let's make this a lot thinner. Make it a bit tight. We can apply the twist to it using FFD, but for now let's make sure it looks presentable. So this is thin. Maybe give it some thickness. This is good. And now let's change the pivot point. Let's apply a snap, and so we can apply the let's collapse all and apply symmetry. There we go, perfect. And now let's add the cylinder. Let's do collapse all here. Maybe it's a bad idea to do so. So it does seem that it might need some editing, so let's do that on the fly. So snapping is on, let's turn it off. So I do see unwanted edges and maybe unwanted face. Let's go into X-ray mode and you can see right here those faces should not be there. Let's switch back to vertices and maybe delete this one. Maybe try to merge. There we go. Nice. And now let's create the handle by using a cylinder. So create that cylinder. Rotate 90 degrees. Center the pivot point and turn on snapping and snap it to any of the points on the handle and just turn off snapping, move it to the middle. And now let's add some segments to it. And let's add FTD 3x3. Select control point, select the middle points, and just make it smaller. There we go. Even though it doesn't match the design, that's okay. Okay. Let's collapse all. And let's apply the same material. So you might be thinking about adding circles to this. So maybe, so let's hide unselected. And we just need this. So let's create 2 cylinders. Or maybe 1 cylinder for now. Turn on snapping and change it to this. So right click and move it in. Let's turn off snapping. Let's create another one. And right here, if we do this, it will only scale locally. So let's select this and add a boolean. So we want to do subtract. we just subtract those and then collapse all. And right now we need to adjust the geometry because right now we have so many n-gons. Let's delete those and we start to do target welds. So and we do cuts, so select the cut tool, and we do the same thing to the back. You know what? We didn't need those faces. We can just delete them because nobody's going to see them. Just delete. Edge. Control backspace. And now let's fix the bottom one. So let's use the cut tool. This needs some cleanup as well. Let's do target weld for vertices. This is the issue with Boolean, but it makes things a lot faster rather than having to find ways to make perfect circles. This does look funky. So what we can do is, let's see with the pivot point is pointing at, so we can do effect and move it. Let's turn on snap, move it here, perfect. And now let's apply a mirror modifier, sorry, symmetry. And now we have a symmetric object. Let's do collapse all. And now let's do unhide all. And that is it. So we should do symmetry for those. We don't need to create another object. We just can copy paste and move. Let's now apply symmetry. Okay, perfect. So maybe this, add an FFD, and maybe just move the bottom points just like that. Maybe a little bit outside just to show there is a hinge. And that is it. Collapse all. Let's select those circles and delete. So let's apply so I don't like this material. I'm going to change it to standard material, a legacy one. Select everything, apply selection, and then make sure everything is black. And let's activate the and hide the plane. And this is it. So with the back one, you can use your imagination. Maybe add a hinge, maybe make this a bit tucked in. So for example, I don't know, just do something like this, just to make it somewhat believable. I don't know. So it would really depends on the design. So and that's it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.